The issues affecting you. Revealed, explained, discussed. Now on WGAL 8 in Focus.
Hello, I'm Susan Shapiro. The court system can be daunting for anyone, but it's even more challenging for people with autism or other mental health issues. The Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts and Supreme Court Justice Kevin Dougherty are working on two initiatives, improving behavioral health and supporting people with autism in the court system. Tonight, we're talking with Justice Dougherty about the programs and how they're making a difference. We're putting court programs helping those in need in focus. Joining us now is Supreme Court Justice Kevin Dougherty, and we're going to begin talking about the initiative supporting people with autism while in the court system. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome back to In Focus. We appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure that you invited me back. Thank you.
Tell me how this program got started.
Well, it got started quite a few years ago. I was a trial judge in the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas Family Division. And it was a juvenile criminal case called delinquency. And I had this child in front of me who was over 14. And at that time, I had convicted him of the crime. And the next stage of a juvenile delinquency is determining whether the child needed to be treated, supervised, and rehabilitated. If I were to adjudge him delinquent, since it was a felony, he would have been a convicted felon the rest of his life. Because our prisons in Pennsylvania are so overcrowded, we give a prior record score for each offense.
Even for a 14-year-old?
Correct. It begins at 14 and moves up. The concern was that I was developing a record for this child so that he would end up in Philadelphia State Road where our prisons are, as opposed to State College where I wanted him to go. And in my speaking with the individual, he would not make eye contact with me. He would fidget, he turned his back on me, and a few times I said, "Son, look at me in my eyes, I'm speaking with you." And I'm thinking his behavior is just his incorrigibility. It was then that the mom brought me to the side and said, "Judge, my son's not ignorant, he's Asperger's." And I had to tell you, I thought I was a well-educated young Philadelphia lawyer, now a judge, and I was humiliated. I had no idea what Asperger's was. So that really embarrassed me. And I thought, you know what, I was ignorant. And if I don't change, I'd be ignorant once. If I ignore it, I'll be ignorant often. And that was not going to be who I am.
And probably a lot of people are in that same boat in these terms.
So then I decided that I had to self-reform, and my self-reform led to my judicial reform. And I had the good grace of being what's called the administrative judge of the Philadelphia Family Court. So I was able to educate our judges, our probation staff, all our employees as to understanding what in fact neurodivergent individuals are, how they think, and how we can best serve them.
What did you learn along the way?
I've learned that I know that I don't know. And I learned that our system was ignorant to the fact that there is neurodivergency throughout Pennsylvania. We have employees, we have possibly judges. What concerned me was the fact that I thought back of my judicial career. And I thought, how many times may I have made the wrong decision? Did I separate a family or incarcerate a parent as a result of their not understanding or being able to communicate? There is no one typical person on the spectrum. They say if you meet one person with autism, you met one person with autism.
No, there's no broad
brush
to paint it. How many of them end up in the court system?
It's interesting you say that. When I inquired, not so much as a trial judge, but in my capacity as a Supreme Court justice, I've learned that we don't collect that data or information. Now, we have the ability to determine if English is your second language, whether you need wheelchair access. But the fact that there's someone on the spectrum was not data we collected. So what I did was push a program and worked with our IT people in the court system, and we developed throughout the Commonwealth an ability to capture that data. And we started in child welfare, primarily because one, it's a closed setting so people can feel free to share this information. And two, it's really necessary because in a child welfare center, it's affecting the entire family. As an aside, in criminal court, I'm either going to send you to jail or put you in probation or say not guilty. In civil court, I'm either going to take your money or give you money. But in family court, we're able to build families and affect generations, generational change, and it really can be effective from that bench. So I thought that would be the best place to do it. And what we found as of 2022, I'd say, is we have over 600 actual active divergent individuals in front of judges.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, Justice, stay with us. We're going to talk more about the program and some of the unique aspects of it.
Thank you.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
We continue our conversation with Supreme Court Justice Kevin Dougherty about the Pennsylvania Supreme Court Autism in the Courts program, which is now at its 5-year mark.
Yes.
How has it changed how you and other judges approach people with autism or on the spectrum in a courtroom?
Well, as a result of the education that we've had and understanding the resources in our counties that are readily available to us, what we've now done is we've made the courtroom and the courthouse much more neurodivergent aware. And at least 12 of our courthouses already have created a sensory room, a calming room in which individuals, whether they're witnesses or defendants or plaintiffs, whatever aspect, they're able to go into a room and it's conducive to meet their need.
What is the room like?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's usually in a pastel color. They were based upon expert studies. We engaged, it was Drexel University. We engaged Dr. Wendy Ross in Philadelphia in particular, and she analyzed, she walked through the entire courthouse. So based upon a recommendation, you have certain, like, lighting is very light, or those lava lamps, things that seem to be very soothing. And we have 12 courthouses that have been adapted, and we even have in Westmoreland County, their district attorney created a sensory room in her office.
Wow.
Which is fantastic. DA, yes.
A courtroom is a scary place for a lot of people. It's such an unusual place to be, and it feels very different. So I imagine for people who have issues like that, it can be even more difficult. You also have what you call sensory bags in some courtrooms. What are those?
These are fidget toys. If it's audio, we have the ability to block out the noise. If the light is too high, we have glasses that are sensitive to their needs. It's a bag filled with goodies that we've provided to all the rooms, mostly in dependency court, so that the children and the parents who are coming in will be able to experience this. And what I found out is that this transcends to the other divisions, so that if a judge now knows an individual shares in a criminal case, we can share the bag and we can share the resources. So we're actually reaching out to families like we've never had.
I bet the families appreciate it. What kind of
sure.
feedback have you gotten?
Sure. No one's supposed to get the warm and fuzzies when you walk into a courthouse.
Right.
People probably are at their most vulnerable in whatever form or fashion. But our job is not to make the black robe we wear a symbol of fear. It should really be a beacon of hope that we're going to resolve your issues. And I like to see it as that we're instituting this in the court. And I'm proud to say, Pennsylvania is not only the first in the Commonwealth, possibly the first court-wide initiative in the nation, to the point where we've had sister states contact us for our best practices and the strategies in our framework.
What kind of training do you provide for courtroom personnel and other judges?
Well, we bring in the experts to teach us how can we diagnose, what is autism? For example, I have someone comes into my courthouse and I convict them, I find out they're bipolar. I know I can order an evaluation and get some psychotropic medication to stabilize the person. But my first question was, what do I do? The operative, right now in Pennsylvania, we have 1 in 31 children are diagnosed, and over 5 million Americans are diagnosed with autism. The concern I have is that they are diagnosed. The people in our child welfare system are usually the children who are most at risk and vulnerable. The purpose of them being here is because they have parental neglect or inability. So if they are not getting the appropriate nutrition, can we really expect them to be diagnosed professionally? Many of them don't have insurance. So I thought the best place, for no better terms, the most low-hanging fruit would be to advance the health and welfare of those children who are seeking our aid. And I believe the numbers have increased as a result of our being educated as to what is necessary? What type of evaluation do I order? What are the resources and what are the practices that are best that that child needs to receive, or the family members?
Yeah, better diagnosis, and
Absolutely.
certainly earlier diagnosis is important.
And what's interesting is 5 years ago, we were told that autism was predominant in young white males. And now, as a result of this awareness, we're finding that more African Americans and as they would say, black and brown people have been diagnosed more than whites currently. What does that mean? I'd like to believe that, again, not only are we making an equal field for justice, but we're making an equal field for all individuals to have an appropriate diagnosis so that they can live the best life they have.
Do you think this diagnosis is why some of them are ending up in the judicial system?
Absolutely. I believe that as a result of their neurodivergency, they are quick to react. They don't know how to respond. They don't have the social cues like you and I may have. And it often results in either substance abuse or a misuse of a computer when you're going through puberty, or maybe reacting in a violent manner as if, flailing their arms and unnecessarily striking someone. But it's their way of trying to maintain calm.
All right, well, stay with us. We're going to talk more about behavioral issues that are in the courtroom as well.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
We're continuing our conversation with Justice Kevin Dougherty, and we're talking about the court system's effort to combat what you call a growing behavioral health issue affecting the courts. How is that?
Well, it's interesting. Through the Autism Initiative, we've learned and we've expanded. It's almost like a tsunami effect. As a result of the education and our judicial reform with regard to autism, it kind of bled into intellectual disabilities and now behavioral health. What we see across the board is the individuals are, I believe the statistics that particularly juveniles are like 7 times more likely to enter our criminal justice system as a result of behavioral health issues. And the system currently is created, I don't want to use the word to hurt them.
Yeah, to punish them.
To punish them, because we don't understand that as well. Another concern is that the majority of the crimes are brought in are as a result of an underlying mental health issue. And our prisons have in fact become de facto mental institutions. And we are incapable of treating them appropriately. So we just can't lock up individuals. We need those treatments and services. And we're working with those with substance abuse because, again, the stigma that I believe that's attached to, for certain people as to autism is most definitely thriving in the world of mental health. People will admit that they have bipolar, or I should say, admit they have high blood pressure and they'll take medication, but for some reason it's embarrassing to admit that you have another condition that you need medication. And they're using illegal substances.
Right, to self-medicate in many ways, right?
And many times, because of this mental illness, they become violent and they cannot control their anger. Jokingly, I shouldn't say jokingly, but I believe it was 2016, I was crossing the street as a justice, leaving my office with my wife and friend to enter my car, and an individual, I believe 26-year-old male, just without notice, turn around and punch me in the face.
Wow. Now, this wasn't someone who knew you were a
judge. No. And I found out that I had been the 3rd individual he hit that day. And the result was it's not an intentional act of violence. It was he had a mental illness that has been untreated for months. And I can remember them saying, well, justice, we'll put him in jail. I'm like, stop. That's not the solution. We cannot lock them up. They need to be treated. Just give him his medication, or at least do something to treat him. And that's what we're trying to do. We're now trying to bring that to the court.
Have you seen outbursts and violent behavior in the courtroom?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. You don't have to go too far. I believe they have television shows that show outbursts in the courtroom. And it's as a result, truly, of the individual's undiagnosed mental health. But we also have some serious mental health diagnoses going on. We just don't have the correct strategies or resources in our system to help other than incarceration, and that's not the solution.
Is it too late when they end up in the judicial system or end up in your courtroom?
I'd like to say it's not too late. I'd like to say that they have a final chance of obtaining some direction. I think if we educate our staff, our probation, even with the autism initiative, and mental health, I've gone to the Pennsylvania Board of Probation and Parole to discuss this. And I have to say, when I inquired as to the use of mental health techniques and strategies, I found out that there was a dearth of information with regard to the court. So this past October, it was the court led for the first time a mental health, behavioral health summit. And we worked hand in glove with the governor's office as well as our General Assembly's bipartisan commission on mental health. And we had over 500 individuals from 3 branches of government convene. And we once again had a great summit. And as a result, we're now going to have, I believe there's scheduled 4 geographical summits so that we can discuss how we can prevent, or I should say, accept, recognize, accept, and treat.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Stay with us. We'll continue our conversation as we look at the future of behavioral health and the initiative.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus. Coverage you can count on.
We're talking with Supreme Court Justice Kevin Dougherty, and we're talking about the behavioral health crisis that affects the courts and, frankly, a lot of different arenas, that's for sure. We often hear from families when someone is arrested and has a mental health issue, they tried to get him help, but it didn't work. They tried to get the person, I shouldn't say just he, but committed, and it didn't work.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're trying to do the prevention angle as well. We're trying to reach out to our system partners that deal with those scenarios that are not part. It's only until you walk through the courthouse doors that we're permitted to get involved, really, unless we know that you're on our probation or parole and we have access to you and your family. The concern is that while we're trying to do the right thing to make our system not so much incarceration, we have to face the fact that there are those individuals who will refuse treatment that are seriously mentally ill and prone to do violence. And it's our responsibility as well to make sure they are removed from civilized society. And we cannot apologize for that either. And that's the delicate balance that judges have to face. And that's why we're trying to educate our population and all our system partners so that we can get that appropriate information. Like I said previously, we're only as good as the information we get. And I'm hoping for newer information so that we can make better decisions.
What's that like for you when you're trying to balance that and someone's before you?
It's difficult. You have to, particularly, I have the greatest respect for our Court of Common Pleas judges and our magisterial district judges. They are making instantaneous decisions. They may defer it, but the reality is you're making on the spot decisions that really will have a ripple effect for that individual as well as the community.
And their families.
And
certainly.
their families. We, in the appellate courts, we have an advantage. The case is over, we are reading it for either an error of law, an abuse of discretion, and when ultimately in the Supreme Court, we're deciding those cases that we believe can affect 13 million Pennsylvanians. So I'm really trying to reach this and institute this knowledge education with our trial courts. My motto has been to listen, learn, and educate. You know, I believe it was Chief Justice Marshall who said, listening well is as an important and a powerful tool as speaking well. You know, and as my own personal, when you say learn, well, I always learn self-reform leads to judicial reform. And the last one, educate, my theory was, if you educate an individual, you saved one life. But if you educate many, you saved the world. Maybe I'm a dreamer, but I think we have an opportunity to save Pennsylvania.
What's been the overall reaction to these kinds of programs?
I believe they are well received. I believe there are those who are concerned that we're going to just open the jails and let people out. And I could tell people that's not how I am. When I was a juvenile judge, my standard line was, I'm here to separate the good child that got caught up in a bad way from the child that needs to be put away. And I'm not going to apologize for either. That's what we were elected to do, to protect our communities. But in that protection to community, one aspect is incarceration. I just don't want it to be the only aspect. I'd like to do the preventive services or the diversionary services, but if it all ends, the end of the road, we have to put them in incarceration, then that's where they go.
Are there enough services out there?
We're learning. As my standard mantra is, I know that I don't know, and I'm learning what we have, and that's what we're doing with these statewide regional tours. We're trying to gather that information. Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the gaps? So that we can develop new strategies and priorities that we can start sharing.
And it all comes down to money, too.
It all comes down to money.
Is there money for that kind of thing?
Well, there has been. We'll see. We're concerned with the climate of change, but a lot of it just involves the sweat equity of the court. And I believe that people have elected judges who truly care and that they are willing to put in their own sweat equity to advance their system in their county.
Well, Justice, thank you so much for sharing all that.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for WGAL 8 in Focus. For all of us at WGAL, I'm Susan Shapiro. And remember, join us again next Saturday night at 7 o'clock for WGAL 8 in Focus, right after NBC Nightly News. And you can watch each episode of In Focus, plus WGAL's latest newscasts, original programming, and more. Just download the Very Local app and stream for free on Roku and Amazon Fire TV.